Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant! Insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win! Again and again and again edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies have now won a season-high 6 straight games. They won 3 home games since the last time I recorded an episode. They are now 3rd in the Western Conference, and things are feeling pretty good right now as Grizzlies fans. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the win over the Pacers, the win over the Pelicans, the win over the Pistons. I'm not going to get into excruciating detail of each game. I will go over some big picture things for this Grizzlies team. Before I do, I just need to make sure that the local listeners, those of you anywhere near Nashville, Tennessee, are aware that I'm hosting a watch party for the NBA Cup game on Tuesday. This Tuesday for the Grizzlies Mavericks game. It's a 7:30 start. I will be at Noble's Beer Hall in East Nashville with other Grizzlies fans. We will be watching the game, a huge game for the Grizzlies, who are still alive in the Cup. We need to win that game by a lot. But if you want to watch the game with other people, if you want to get some of the swag that I'm going to give away, if you want to win some of the prizes that we're going to have, it's going to be Noble's Beer Hall this Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Grizzlies Mavericks NBA Cup, huge matchup. And beyond the NBA Cup stuff, the game against the Mavericks is an awesome measuring stick. I mean, we won 6 straight. We're feeling good. 5th in net rating, 5th in offensive rating, 5th in defensive rating. Meanwhile, the Mavericks have won 8 of 9. Luka Doncic is available. Luka basically never loses against Ja Morant. It's a tough road game. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. You can watch with me over at Noble's Beer Hall on Tuesday. Also thinking about that game, I mean, I don't want to rain on the parade already, but when I think of it being a measuring stick game, I think back to the last time we were like measuring stick game. Those road games against the Lakers and the Warriors, and the Grizzlies did not do well in those games. However, right now, we can focus on the fun of the win streak. 6 straight games. The last 4 have been at home. The Grizzlies now have 10 home wins on the season. Last year, they had 9 for the entire season. And the offense is absolutely clicking. They keep scoring over 120 points in all of these games. They had 36 assists in the last 2 games. For the season right now, the Grizzlies are averaging 120 points per game and 30 assists per game. They're first in the NBA in assists per game. And those numbers reflect winning basketball. And not just that, those were standard numbers that we used to look at when we wanted to define whether or not a Grizzlies game was a success. If you remember in past seasons, those were markers we used to say, hey, if the Grizzlies get 30 assists, they're going to win. If the Grizzlies score 120 points, they're going to win. Think back to the 2021-2022 56-win season. The Grizzlies were 30-0 when they recorded at least 120 points in a basketball game. Now, frequently these feats would overlap. If If you score 120 points, you're going to pick up a lot more assists, and that's what's been happening this year. Right now, they have 5 straight games where they've had at least 120 points and at least 30 team assists. Right now, they're 9-1 on the season in games where they get at least 120 points and record at least 30 assists. Our friend Sean Coleman points out that under Taylor Jenkins, they are 61-8 in games where they hit both of those marks. So things are really clicking for the Grizzlies, and I honestly feel like this season so far, where you've only had Ja Morant for 10 games or so, I think it feels a lot like the 2021-2022 season and the 2022-2023 season. Going into last year, I held the opinion that the Grizzlies had somewhat solved regular season basketball. They were usually going to win about 50 games no matter who they rolled out there, as long as they had some semblance of team health. Well, last year punched a hole in that theory. Even before all the injuries stacked up, at the beginning of the year, they got off to a terrible start. They did not perform well in games where Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. were available, when Marcus Smart was available with those guys. So maybe I lost some of that confidence. But right now, it seems like last season was absolutely the aberration. And you credit the players and the coaches for having, that seems like it handles regular season basketball just fine. Now, what about the postseason? Who cares? We don't have to worry about that yet. Like the half-court offense, still not very good, but when you're getting this many rebounds, you're getting this many assists, you're scoring this many paint points, you're doing whatever you want seemingly on offense. And that right now has been a recipe for a lot of success. But it's not just offense. The defense has been extremely strong. You might even say or argue the defense is the strongest part of this team. These lineups that the Grizzlies are throwing out there, even when you slip up and allow the Pacers to have a 45-point first quarter against you, it's the most points the Grizzlies have allowed in a quarter this season. You fall down by 19, but then the defense is consistent enough that you're allowed to get back in the game. You hold the Pacers to 46 total points through the second and third quarters. And these lineups with Jaren Jackson Jr., Jaren continues playing at an all-defensive team level. But Brandon Clarke's been awesome on defense. Marcus Smart keeps making huge plays. Maybe the story of the last week for the Grizzlies is just that Marcus Smart has been scintillating in his bench role. Marcus had a great dramatic steal against the Pacers. It feels like the typical Marcus Smart highlight play since he's been on the Grizzlies. He had a knockaway steal where he then dove on the ground to pick up the loose ball, but it was dramatic because he had just picked up an offensive foul on a 3-on-1 fast break. He had just basically wiped away a fast break basket for the Grizzlies by playing referee roulette. He got tangled up with Benedict Mathurin, but he redeemed himself by making this dramatic steal right after. Also, you go back to the game against the Pistons last Wednesday, where Marcus had one of his best games as a Grizzly. Now, Marcus, as far as I can tell, based on his game logs, he's due for one of these basically every year. Last year, he didn't play that many games, but he had one of these games against the Lakers. In this one against the Pistons, he had 25 points. He made 7 threes, and it felt like he single-handedly won the game, swung the game. It was close early before the Grizzlies pulled away. In that game, led by Marcus Smart's 25 points, the bench had 72 points. Jaren and Desmond did not have very good offensive games against the Pistons, but the bench had 72. You had Jake Laravia with a season-high 19 points. He made 8 out of 9 field goals. Marcus Smart, again, season-high 25 points. Had the most threes any Grizzlies player have made in a game this year with 7. And the team pulls away in that one. Also, of course, no Ja Morant against the Pistons. We, didn't cover that on an episode because of Thanksgiving week, but Ja Morant returned from his absence And we're like, yay, Ja's back. And then he ended up missing the next game. And that was not ideal, but Scottie Pippen Jr. in that one stepped up with a great game. Scottie had 19 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, made 9 out of 12 field goal attempts in that one. Meanwhile, in the next 2 games against the Pelicans and Pacers, Scottie back to a small bench role, played just 25 minutes combined in those 2 games, had a total of 6 points and 6 assists. But I think the exciting part for the Grizzlies, I mean, yeah, you're a game and a half out of first place in the West, and Ja's played 11 games. Edey's missed a bunch of time. You've had Desmond Bane miss a bunch of games. Marcus Smart has missed a bunch of games. The exciting part is you're getting contributions up and down the roster. You're getting unexpected, I think, contributions based on when the season started. Like the team 3-point shooting overall. It's not maybe a strength of the team. They're just middle of the pack in 3-pointers made per game. They're below average in 3-point percentage, but you're still getting unexpected contributions from Jalen Wells, who keeps starting, who keeps playing great. He keeps defending without fouling. He is a good all-around kind of 5th starter floor spacer out there. Like, you're getting an unexpected, at least for me, contribution from him this season from the 3-point line. You're also getting better than expected 3-point shooting from Jay Huff, from Jake Laravia. Jaren has made his threes, although he had an 0 for 12 stretch against the Pelicans and Pistons. He bounced back against the Pacers. But you're getting these unexpected 3-point shooting boosts on your roster. Meanwhile, Desmond Bane is not making his 3-pointers. Maybe that's a big storyline. I mean, that's a big storyline for the season right now. You're 14-7. You're feeling good. Desmond Bane, his stats are not exactly what you would anticipate. There's some question whether or not he's still hurt. He has told the local reporters he's not hurt, has no issues whatsoever. He cited the new offense. They're spreading the ball around. That's a reason why his numbers are down, perhaps. I mean, that's not a reason why he's shooting 31% for the season from the 3-point line. He's averaging just about 12 points per game since he returned from the oblique injury. He had 3 straight games in single digits, and that's just bizarre. I don't think you can blame the new offense on that. That's weird. So I guess we can feel good. Everything's going great, and you assume Desmond Bane is going to catch fire at some point and then maybe lift the Grizzlies out of being mediocre to below average at 3-point shooting, and then the Grizzlies will be even better. But Ja Morant missed the game against the Pistons, but then he came back for that cup victory, the Grizzlies' first ever cup victory. Now the Wizards are the only team in the NBA who's never won an NBA Cup game. Ja Morant comes back to beat the Pelicans. He shines in the victory over the Pacers, thoroughly outplays Tyrese Halliburton the whole game. The Grizzlies were face guarding Halliburton a lot. They really were focused, it seemed like, on taking him out of the game. Mission accomplished. Halliburton did nothing in that game as the Grizzlies had their biggest comeback of the season by erasing that 19-point deficit. They win going away. I mean, Ja Morant's been amazing this year. The alley-oop finish that he had off the pass from Brandon Clarke against the Pelicans was a fantastic highlight. He had 27 points against the Pelicans. For the season, he's averaging 21 points and 9 assists in just 27 minutes per game. He leads the NBA in assist percentage. He's making 84% of his free throws on huge volume. Now, he started seasons hot from the foul line before, so I'm not going to get too overly carried away praising him for improving his free throw percentage because he's burned me before. But if he can keep that free throw percentage in the mid-80s, that's a big development for him. The Grizzlies are 8-3 when he plays. Also, it feels like his defense has been better. He's been really bodying guys up. He's been taking a lot of charges. Maybe you want to credit Marcus Smart for teaching him how to do that. but Ja has been defending well, and that's why he's not harming the team on defense. But meanwhile, you have all these other good defenders, Jalen and Marcus and Brandon and Jake and Jaren, of course. And that's why this team has been very good defensively so far. And Jaren's season, I mean, let's talk about the last 3 games, but Jaren, the last 3 games and the whole season has been amazing. He absolutely is playing at an all-star level. I would argue he's first-team all-defense level right now. It's going to be hard to win Defensive Player of the Year with Wembanyama out there. A lot of other worthy defenders, but Jaren has been spectacular. He currently carries a 10-game streak of picking up at least 1 block and 1 steal. That's the longest streak in the NBA in the past 6 seasons. He already had that stretch where he became the first player ever. I mean, these are sort of overlapping stats. Became the first player ever with 5 straight games, making multiple threes, blocking multiple shots, and also picking up a steal. On offense, he is a mismatch, basically at all times. He can score on post moves and off the dribble against anyone his size. And usually he can do it against guys who are smaller than him. If you put a smaller guy on him, he's just going to post you up. And also he's hitting his 3-pointers. You combine that with what he's doing on the defensive end, I can't comprehend not being excited about Jaren Jackson Jr. If you still criticize Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know what's wrong with you. The guy's been amazing. Against the Pacers, had 25 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 6 for 6 from the foul line, 3 out of 6 on 3-pointers. And that's the other thing. He's a good free throw shooter. Against the Pelicans, 23 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. Yeah, the Pistons stat line, it was rough. Missed all 7 of his 3-pointers. 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, 2 steals. And we call that a bad game for Jaren. Jaren's been awesome. Also, a couple of other just general observations. Here are 2 things I'm noticing. I think about Jaren Jackson Jr., and the major criticism with Jaren has always been his fouling and his rebounding. The fouls have been down. Relatively, his foul rate is lower than it's been in previous seasons. The rebounding has been fine for Jaren, but the Grizzlies team rebounding, that and the 3-point shooting were my biggest concerns coming into the season. The Grizzlies team rebounding has been excellent. The offensive rebounding has been great. Zach Edey was huge at that when he played, but Zach Edey's been gone. Zach Edey has missed this entire 6-game win streak. By the way, I think my understanding is Zach Edey is supposed to come back at the end of this week. Like, how's he going to reacclimate? Just take Jay Huff's minutes? The team has been clicking without him. How's he going to fit back in? But Edey had been great at offensive rebounding, had helped the overall team numbers, but even without Edey, they're still doing a good job rebounding. Marcus Smart has some really good offensive rebounding numbers. So does Brandon Clarke. One thing I've noticed, and I could be wrong here. This might just be an observation with no stats to back it up. I feel like this season, one of the rebounding strategies is to tap the ball to their teammates. I mean, of course, everyone does this, but I feel like the Grizzlies have done this more than ever. They do it more than I'm accustomed to seeing it. It feels like. Again, I could be wrong. If you have data out there to prove me wrong, please share it. But like, Brandon's undersized. Jaren is not that good of a rebounder. However, they can usually tip the ball with their fingers. They can high point the ball by leaping and just batting it to somebody else. And you see Desmond Bane doing this. Like, Bane's rebounding numbers, his total rebounding numbers are way up. I think he's the beneficiary of a lot of these taps. I don't know if this was something they worked on or practiced. And again, I'd like to leave myself an out to say I could be totally wrong. But it feels like the Grizzlies have made it a specific focus to not worry about grabbing the rebound yourself. Just get a finger on it and knock it away from the other team. It's just something I've observed. Maybe you watch for it too. See if you agree with me that they're doing this. Another thing I've observed, this is not related to defense or rebounding. I feel like the Grizzlies have done a lot of individual work on their Euro steps and their deceleration moves. Those moves where you slow down greatly and take a big step right, a big step left. Of course, these moves used to be travels. Not 10 years ago, these were called travels. It honestly feels like a gray area in the rule book right now. After you pick up the ball, after your gather step, you can take 2 more steps. How slow can those steps be? How long can you linger on each one? I don't know. But I'm seeing Marcus Smart do this. I'm seeing Santi Aldama and Jake Laravia do this all the time. Scottie Pippen Jr. does this. Ja does it, but Ja's are much faster. They're much more sped up. I wonder if this is something they focused on. I don't know if that's a team thing, an individual thing, but it seems like all Grizzlies players are doing this a lot. League-wide players are doing this too, but I feel like the Grizzlies do it more than most teams. Again, I don't have any data to support my observation. Just something I'm noticing. Now let's talk about Marcus Smart a little bit more before taking a break. Marcus Smart, of course, had that massive game against the Pistons. He was really good against the Pelicans and Pacers. It seems like he is totally settling in to this bench role, and he's put together, I think, some of the best basketball he's played on the Grizzlies so far. Some numbers for Marcus's play. Right now, according to Cleaning the Glass, he's 92nd or in the 92nd percentile for steal percentage for his position, and in the 94th percentile for block percentage, and 96th percentile for offensive rebound percentage. These are all, of course, elite numbers. I would call them Meltonian numbers. Marcus Smart has been really, really good. Also, by the way, Marcus Smart, I think, has incredible synergy with Jake Laravia. The Jake Laravia, Marcus Smart tandem, the buddy cop movie that is Marcus Smart and Jake Laravia, let's call it True Detective Season 4, they've been so good together. I feel like, again, this is something else I don't have data for. I can look this up, though. I feel like Jake Laravia's shooting percentage is really, really good when Marcus is the one throwing him the ball. Maybe I'm wrong. I can look up, and I did look up their net rating when playing together. Right now, the Grizzlies have a plus 18.4 net rating when those guys are on the court together. That's in 262 possessions. I mean, going back to training camp, I saw those guys working together in the open portion of training camp practice, the shoot-around stuff, where it seemed like they were working together. Then in training camp, when Marcus was asked who's going to step up with all the injuries, he pointed to Jake Laravia. It seems like they're a great tandem working together, both of them racking up lots of assists, both of them blocking shots. They're both really high up as far as block percentage for their position. They're playing so well together. By the way, the Jake Laravia story, we can get into him now. I mean, he keeps playing just fantastically. I don't know how he loses minutes when the team gets more healthy. Also, he's been a part, maybe, of some closing lineups. It's hard to figure out what the closing lineups are because the Grizzlies have been winning by a lot. Great problem. Keep winning by a lot. We don't know who they're going to play in a close game. Of course, we know, several of them. But it's been 2 straight games where at the end of the first half, they closed with Ja, Desmond, Marcus, Jaren Jackson Jr., and then Jake Laravia was the 5th guy. We expect Ja, Desmond, Marcus, and Jaren. Jake Laravia was the 5th guy to close first halves. Now, in the fourth quarters, for 2 straight games, this felt like a closing lineup. They eventually pulled it before the game was over because the game was out of hand. But they had Ja, Desmond, Marcus, Jaren, and Santi Aldama. So maybe that is the preferred closing lineup. Speaking to the fact that the Grizzlies haven't had close games, they're 2-5 this season in games that were within 5 points in the final 5 minutes. So they haven't been good in close games. Although I know 2 of those games weren't really up in the air. Like, I think those numbers are sort of fake because one of those games was a Wizards game where you had a big lead and then the Wizards got into it. It was sort of like the game didn't feel like it was in doubt. And then another one of those games, one of the losses was the Warriors Cup game where you were down by a ton and you made a furious rally where you gave yourself some better point differential. But the Warriors didn't care. They never put their starters back in the game. So that wasn't really up in doubt. So they're sort of 1-4, I would say, in clutch games so far. But as far as the last two games and closing lineups, maybe Santi Aldama is out there in them because last two games he's been out there with 4 or 5 minutes to go before they cleared the bench. And let's talk a little bit more about Santi Aldama, and we'll do that right after this short break. All right, Santi Aldama had 15 points and 6 assists against the Pacers. In the Pelicans and Pacers games, he had a stretch where he made 6 consecutive three-pointers. His three-point shooting, the pendulum is swinging back up. He's been so streaky this season. Where does his season-long three-point percentage sit right now? With the hot and cold stretches, it sits at 33%, which just so happens to be his career three-point percentage. But a lot of his other numbers are up from his career numbers. He's currently averaging a career high in field goal percentage, in two-point percentage, his points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game, all up. Santi is really in a great groove right now. I mean, it feels like the whole team basically is. I mean, maybe you could argue like Desmond Bane, not in a great groove. Luke Kennard, frankly, he had a very quiet Thanksgiving week. The last 3 games, Luke scored a total of 13 points, made 2 3-pointers over those 3 games. His minutes quite low, but of course, you have John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart, also Scottie Pippen Jr. Not that many minutes available for the backup guards. But Santi has been a big bright spot, I feel like, this year, especially coming off of last year. And even though he had that really long stretch this season already where he couldn't make 3-pointers, the rest of his game has been there. His activity, his playmaking, and that's been team-wide. I mean, the way they share the basketball. Here's some more assist numbers. The Grizzlies against the Pacers became the first team in the NBA this season to have 5 different players each record 5 or more assists. That was the first time in Grizzlies franchise history that they've had a game like that. By the way, last season, the Cavaliers had a game where 6 different players recorded at least 5 assists. The Pacers win was also the Grizzlies' 5th straight game with 30 or more assists. That's a franchise record. It was their 7th game this year where they had at least 35 assists. That is the most games in any season in franchise history where they've had 35 or more assists. We're 21 games in. They already set the franchise record for most games in a season with 35 or more assists. Back in 2022, 2023, they had 6 such games. So you can credit the new offense. I think that's part of it. Of course, the pace is high. That's part of it. The Grizzlies are spreading the ball around. A lot of it might just be Ja Morant. I mean, Ja Morant has been more of a playmaker so far. But whatever the reasons, the Grizzlies are racking up tons of assists. Brandon Clarke. We got to compliment Brandon Clarke, who has stayed in the starting lineup. I don't mind puffing my chest out and saying that I was supportive of Brandon starting the whole season. Once he got in, I'm like, yeah, let's play Brandon Clarke. Brandon Clarke's good. I don't care that he's missing his shots. He's a good player. We hoped it would come around. It feels like it's coming around. The springiness is back. He's getting bouncier and bouncier. He has dunked many times in the last 3 games. He's starting to tip the ball in. He finished an alley-oop with a very athletic tap in. The efficiency is there. The offensive rebounding is there. The team defense remains elite. Brandon's been so good. Here's a fun stat. There are 1,001 different two-man combinations in the NBA this season that have played at least 100 minutes together. This is according to NBA.com. Which one has the best rating of those 1,001 two-man lineups? Brandon Clarke and Ja Morant, plus 30 points per 100 possessions. So much of the lineup data looks great. When you're 14-7, when you have a great net rating, you have the best net rating in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. Maybe it's second best. It's top two. Can't remember. All those numbers looking good. By the way, Santi's numbers for the last 3 games, 18 for 25 on his field goal attempts. Keeps playing great. As far as J-Huff, the last few games, his three-point shot hasn't totally been there. He's just 3 out of 11 from the three-point line in those games, but he still serves the purpose, as in he's a rim protector. Not much of a perimeter defender, but he's protecting the rim and he's spacing on offense. I mean, part of the, I think, high assist numbers, part of the vision for what the Grizzlies wanted to do that we can now see is they've had the ability to play 5 out almost with every lineup. This is something that's going to change when Zach Edey returns. But right now, the bench lineup, Scottie Pippen Jr., Marcus Smart, Jake Laravia, Santi Aldama, and Jay Huff. Nobody's in the paint. I mean, they move guys down in the dunker spot, but they're able to spread out the defense. Jay Huff, a big part of that. Some final numbers. Against the Pistons, they scored 71 points in the first half. That's their highest scoring first half of the season. Some overall numbers for the team. Of course, I've been saying the Grizzlies are third in the West, which is true. They're 1.5 games behind the Thunder, 1 game behind the Rockets. To poke some holes in that, if you want to, I saved it for the end of the show. Their schedule still has been very easy. We highlighted this portion of the schedule saying we need to take care of business, and they did. You compliment them for taking care of business. Also, they didn't mess around. These were not close games. When you play teams that are under 500 and you blow them out, that's good. There's nothing not good about it. It's great. But you can also correctly point out they've had a very soft schedule so far. That analytics site Dunks and Threes ranks their schedule as having been the easiest so far. The metric they use takes into account which players actually suited up and played in the games. The Grizzlies have faced the easiest schedule, the worst offensive players so far, and the second worst defensive players so far, according to their estimated plus minus. And again, based on the players and the minutes played of those players in each game. Also, the Grizzlies right now are +5 in home games. They've played 5 more home games than road games. So the schedule is going to stiffen up. It's going to get tougher. I mean, already, the game on Tuesday against the Mavericks, a great test right there. By the way, as far as what it takes for the Grizzlies to advance, at the very least, I don't know if I have all these scenarios correct. At the very least, they have to beat the Mavericks by 24. To have a better point differential than the Mavericks, because they're going to be, best case scenario, if the Grizzlies win, they'll be 2-2 in the group stage. To advance with a 2-2 record, you're going to have one of the best, or you're going to have the best point differential. And there's going to be a few 2-2 teams after Tuesday night. So at the very least, to overcome the Mavericks, you would need a +24. You need to win that game by 24. Whether or not that's good enough to advance you past any other 2-2 team, I don't honestly know. I'm sure the NBA will release some information on advancement scenarios in the next 24 hours. Also, the NBA is going to release their Western Conference Player of the Week award today. Good chance a Grizzly gets it. It usually goes to a player on a team that went undefeated. The Grizzlies went undefeated last week. Could be Jaren. averaged 20 points per game in all 4 games. Could be Ja. Ja's stats, I would say, are arguably better, but Ja only played 3 games. Might go to somebody else, but good chance a Grizzly player wins the Western Conference Player of the Week award. And with that, I think I did everything in my notes. Again, if you're anywhere near Nashville, please come down to Noble's Beer Hall this Tuesday for that Mavericks and Grizzlies game. It's a 7:30 start. After the Mavericks game, the Grizzlies have a home game against the Kings. The Kings are 9-12, a very disappointing 9-12, but also the Kings, I think, are a better team than any of the last 5 or 6 teams the Grizzlies have played. So that's a reasonably good test. After that, road game against the Celtics. I mean, there's a measuring stick. After the game against the Celtics, that Celtics game is on Saturday. You play second night of a back-to-back against the Wizards, who are absolutely terrible. The Wizards just finished no-win November. So hopefully you don't trip up on the second night of a back-to-back. But right now, things are feeling great. Grizzlies are playing amazingly well. You're getting great performances from a bunch of players. You can be excited about your rookie, Jalen Wells. Zach Edey is coming back. Marcus is shining in a bench role. Brandon Clarke is looking like his old self. And oh, by the way, when Morant, Desmond Bane, Brandon, and Jaren share the court together, it doesn't matter who's out there with them. This is year after year after year. The Grizzlies are probably going to win, and they're probably going to win by a lot. I love seeing it. Anyways, if you want to support this program, if you want to get exclusive bonus content, including a bonus episode that I released on Saturday, you can do all of that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Besides the monthly bonus episode, you can also join the listener Slack channel. We have a Grizzlies Slack channel. Come hang out in there, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right, you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.